Hi class, thanks for watching. So even though it goes against the whole silent movie thing, I wanted to share just a little bit of audio for two reasons. One, I think a lot about how something's going to sound when I'm writing, and I try to make what I'm writing, at least for fun, not for school, when it's all papers and stuff, but try to make what I'm writing sound the way I would talk. So that's one. And then the second reason is I just wanted to share some David Sedaris with you. He's kind of my idol. I've been really into him and trying to write like him since high school. I'm not close to there yet, but he's great, and he does a great job reading his stuff and getting his voice across as well. So, without further ado, first I'll read just a short thing from my blog. It's a fairly recent one, and then we'll move on to Mr. Sedaris. Thanks. The one person you do not want as your opponent in a deadly manhunt. I've thought about this a lot over the years. Some celebrities you really believe you could take on, were you forced to play the deadliest game. The Olsen twins, Bob Dylan, the Pope. I think I could even stand a fighting chance against a few professional athletes, like gymnasts, they're tiny, and golfers, 'cause they're golfers. Venus Williams, though, is not a person with whom I would willingly engage in hand-to-hand combat to the death, and neither would you. For the following reasons. 1. She is enormous. The woman is 6'1". If I stood on my dad's shoulders, we might make it to that altitude, but then Venus might be entitled to have Serena on her shoulders to make it fair, and we would still certainly die. 2. She is stunningly fast. Her legs are approximately 6 feet long. Her hunting me down would be like a greyhound chasing a corgi. 3. She has stamina. I might try to run from her, and she might even give me a head start, but I would get tired within a mile. Venus Williams could hunt you day and night without rest. She would run alongside your getaway train, if you managed to snag one, until it stopped the next town over, and then she would get you. And 4, she makes terrifying noises. It's one thing to be running through the woods with a giant, muscle-bound, physically superior opponent on your tail. It's another when said opponent is making noises you've only ever heard on Jurassic Fight Club. Being on the other side of the net, or ahead of her in the final run of your life, must feel like being a fish and hearing the shriek of an osprey overhead. It is the sound of something better than you come to put you out of your misery.
Six to 8 black men. I've never been much for guidebooks, so when trying to get my bearings in some strange American city, I normally start by asking the cab driver or hotel clerk some silly question regarding the latest census figures. I say silly because I don't really care how many people live in Olympia, Washington, or Columbus, Ohio. They're nice enough places, but the numbers mean nothing to me. My second question might have to do with the average annual rainfall, which again doesn't tell me anything about the people who have chosen to call this place home. What truly interests me are the local gun laws. Can I carry a concealed weapon, and if so, under what circumstances? What's the waiting period for a Tommy gun? Could I buy a Glock 7 if I were recently divorced or fired from my job? I've learned from experience that it's best to lead into this subject as delicately as possible, especially if you and the local citizen are alone and enclosed in a relatively small area. Bide your time, though, and you can walk away with some excellent stories. I've learned, for example, that the blind can legally hunt in both Texas and Michigan. From an equal opportunity standpoint, I suppose it's only fair. But still, I find it more than a little unsettling. In Texas, the blind hunters must be accompanied by a sighted companion, but in Michigan, they're allowed to go it alone. Which raises the question, how do they find whatever it is they just shot? In addition to that, how do they get home? Are the Michigan blind allowed to drive as well? I ask about guns not because I want one of my own, but because the answers vary so widely from state to state. In a country that's become increasingly homogeneous, I'm reassured by these last charming touches of regionalism. Guns aren't really an issue in Europe, so when traveling abroad, my first question usually relates to barnyard animals. What do your roosters say is a good icebreaker, as every country has its own unique interpretation. In Germany, where dogs bark "vow, vow," and both the frog and the duck say "quack," the rooster greets the dawn with a hearty "kikariki." Grecian roosters crow "kiriaki," and in France they scream "cocorico," which sounds like one of those horrible pre-mixed cocktails with a pirate on the label. When told that an American rooster says cock-a-doodle-doo, my hosts look at me with disbelief and pity. When do you open your Christmas presents is another good question, as I think it explains a lot about national character. People who traditionally open gifts on Christmas Eve seem a bit more pious and family-oriented than those who wait until Christmas morning. They go to Mass, open presents, eat a late meal, return to church the following morning, and devote the rest of the day to eating another big meal. Gifts are generally reserved for children, and the parents tend not to go overboard. It's nothing I'd want for myself, but I suppose it's fine for those who prefer food and family to things of real value.